I think one of the bigger things that we benefited from was we sort of tested the waters early on with some small M&A deals.
Okay.
We did 2 acqui-hires within acquisitions of 2 or 3 people, companies in the first couple months that I was on the job. And we cut our teeth on those deals. We built a playbook.
Kind of like the string of pearls, we're not going to mess up on just one big one.
Totally. And it was unbelievably valuable. And we literally wrote out a playbook. And we did postmortems after each one. Yeah. And we said, hey, here's what we did well, and here's what we completely botched, right? And then when we got to the next one, we pulled those playbooks up, and we said, all right, how are we going to attack, what we failed at before?
Yeah.
How are we going to do things differently? And that, I think, really played a hand in sort of successfully growing to larger acquisitions, which we've done now 5 or 6 acquisitions here since I've been here.
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a special edition of the podcast. What you're about to hear is an interview I did with Paul Mulé of Arcadia from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. That's right, we were invited down to Wall Street to shoot a series of podcasts with CFOs from pre-IPO companies. This is the first of the bunch, and it did not disappoint. On this podcast, I talked to Paul about leaving his career at JP Morgan Chase as an investment banker after 14 years and making the leap to an operator role. He provides perspective on how there are so many companies chasing the public markets, but so few CFOs up to the task of guiding them there. We talked about betting on yourself in any role and being willing to take 2 steps back to take that first step forward. Paul tells us about the evolution of Arcadia's business model and explains why data moats are so valuable at scale, something that all of us should take note of. Then we touch on the role of M&A at private companies and if people working there are better suited for acquisitions or driving more innovation. Finally, we talk about the importance of not being afraid to share too much information with employees and treating them like adults. All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. Quick math, the less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. That's the goal, isn't it? But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. Yesterday's price is not today's price. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to Netsuite by Oracle. Netsuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform and one source of truth. With Netsuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required. Access from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you've got one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all your major business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies, wow, that's a lot of customers, have already made the move. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. And back by popular demand, NetSuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for a few more weeks. Head to netsuite.com/metrics. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, you know your boy loves some metrics. That's netsuite.com/metrics. Please do it, guys. I really need this. Cash is king. As the CFO of a SaaS company, I know firsthand how important it is to maintain a healthy AR balance. If you can't effectively manage cash, you can't service debt, make payroll, or invest in growing your business. That's why I'm so excited to partner with the sponsor of today's episode, Maxio, the leading billing and financial operations platform for B2B SaaS. Maxio helps top SaaS companies like Chili Piper, Crunchbase, and Stack Overflow get cash in the door faster by automating collections and dunning. Gone are the days of manually chasing down invoices. Join the 2,500 plus subscription businesses using Maxio, formerly SaaS Optics and Chargeify, to eliminate revenue leakage and streamline order to cash. It's never been easier to get paid. Visit maxio.com/run the numbers to supercharge your financial operations in 2024. Not only does requesting a demo using the Run the Numbers link help support this podcast, ya boy, you'll also receive a 10% discount on your first year with Maxio. Woo! That's maxio.com/run the numbers. That's maxio.com/run the numbers. Paul, welcome to the Run the Numbers podcast. And more importantly, welcome to the New York Stock Exchange.
Thank you, CJ. It's awesome to be here. I had no idea this was going to be our background.
I can't believe they let me in. As a former banker, this must be familiar to you. Maybe we start there.
So you left banking after a 14-year career at JP Morgan Chase. Before we started, you said you had to wear a suit every day, so it's kind of a relief to not have to do that. And so you put all the hours in, you climbed the ladder, and then you said, hey, I'm going to try this operator thing. So why?
It's an incredible question. Well, let me first start by saying I had an incredible experience at JP Morgan. When I started, I thought I'd be there 2 or 3 years. It turns out I almost spent 15 years. And I had different roles within. I started out on the credit and debt side of the business through the financial crisis, which was a fascinating time to be there, see sort of what held up and what didn't.
Wow.
Then I moved over to the equity side of the house, spent over a decade in technology, equity capital markets, and had an unbelievable experience. But I'll tell you, one of the things I observed through the years, especially on the equity side, is there's so many unbelievable tech companies out there that can and should be public. And there are a scarcity of CFOs who actually know how to do that.
Yeah.
Whether it's an IPO or a sale, a successful exit, it's a skill set that's really valuable. And if you look out in the market, there are so many CFOs who once you've sort of done that once, you could do it a million times. And so I started with the idea that I wanted to build this foundation.
Yeah.
I sort of ended with this viewpoint that there's this incredible opportunity, and I thought, I either make a decision to be a career banker, which would have been great, or I take a leap, and here I am.
It's funny that you say that there are a lot of companies that want to go public and probably have the characteristics to do so, but there aren't a lot of CFOs, and I think about that a lot because there aren't many Mike Scarpellis of the world where they continually get the call, but it's kind of like if you have the right experience, you'll get a shot at multiple companies. It's like if you can make it to that level, then you're almost a scarce asset as a CFO.
That was literally the mindset and the observation.
I do want to pause on that moment though, because I talk to people all the time about career changes and what was going through their head at the time. Did you feel like you were taking a step forwards or backwards? What was your mindset there? Because you built up like all this kind of brand equity in banking, and then you're like, I'm gonna go. You kind of have to take a shot on yourself.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, if I'm being honest, it sort of felt like a little bit of a step backwards.
Yeah.
I was seeing some really cool high-profile deals, front page of the Wall Street Journal type of stuff, and this was just a complete change. But it did feel like a little bit of a step backwards at first, sort of by design, though. I through the interview process, I would say, whether I was talking with folks at Arcadia, where I am now, or other shops, the very first question was always, you're a banker, what makes you think you can be an operator? And there was this barrier that you had to break. And so it's this mindset of, all right, well, I'm going to have to take a step back and get my feet wet to take 2 steps forward. And actually, it's funny, I was thinking about this last night as I was going through some of my notes. When I made the shift in banking from the debt side of the business to the equity side of the business, it was like a complete shift from one side of the capital structure to the other.
Yeah.
It was a similar type of scenario. I remember my prior boss, awesome guy, and he looked me square in the eyes and he said, what makes you think you can do equity? Like all you know is debt. And part of my pitch there was, look, you can hire someone who's done equity capital markets before, and that person's probably going to be more productive for you in the first 6 months. And if that's what you're looking for, by all means. But I think you're probably trying to hire someone you're going to judge their productivity over a decade, not 6 months, right? And so I looked him right back in the eyes and I said, nobody's going to run up that learning curve faster than me.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to bet on myself. And so judge me on the productivity on, day 181, not day 10. And fortunately, he gave me the shot, and I fast forward, very similar pitch to my CEO now, our board, and I'm grateful that they gave me the shot, because I don't think I'd be here today if they didn't.
There's always this catch-22, and I ran into it as well, where I said, I want to be a CFO, and they said, yeah, but you've never been a CFO before. It's like, well, duh, chicken or the egg here. And I do think there's something to be said about the loyalty and the drive that it creates to have somebody say, you know what, I'm going to give you that shot. I'm going to bet on you. Let's see what you can do.
Yeah, super grateful. I'm a sports guy, and so I always make analogies to sports and baseball. Big Phillies fan, and I think about the high floor player, right? That's sort of like a little safer, but their ceiling's capped, versus the high ceiling player. And there's a role for each of those individuals. I think for a company like Arcadia, who has grand long-term growth visions, a high ceiling is of value. And so that's how I pitch myself. And again, like I said, I'm grateful. So I hear that.
Look at that! They're ringing the bell behind us. That's a high ceiling right there. I've never experienced this. This is pretty neat in the moment. That's got to be a pretty cool feeling. Talking about having a cool feeling to go to a company, what made Arcadia special to you? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, there's so much. Little known stories. I've actually sort of seen the company grow since inception.
Oh, no way! I didn't know you were there at the beginning. Kind of.
I was a seed investor. Funny enough.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've known some of the management team for a long time. I actually played a role in sourcing the lead, one of the co-lead investors in the family and friends rounds early on. And I, like I said, I was in tech, pure play tech, right? So enterprise software, payments, internet, digital media. And Kieran, our founder and CEO, was very focused on sort of the business model and, ensuring that he was making the right decisions. So he sort of like used me as an informal
kind of a sounding board.
Yeah, just as a sounding board. And so I've seen the company grow. I've seen sort of the company try different things, be successful in some things and not successful in other things. But I think that history and sort of knowledge and know-how of the company really helped me as I approached the opportunity. A funny story, when Kieran, our founder, reached out to me, I was based in New York. He gave me a call, all excited. We're opening up an office in New York City. We made our first hire. We need to invest in our finance and accounting team. Who do you know? Like, he was definitely not calling to convince me to join.
You think he was kicking the tires?
No, he was definitely not kicking the tires. I'd like to think he was. I think he was just trying to access my network of friends in the finance world, and I threw it out there. What about me? And I think he looked at me like I had six eyes. But one thing led to another, and we're here. But I would say, I was very focused on going to a company that had really exciting long-term growth and exit opportunities down the line. You think about all the characteristics of companies that have successful exits, and there's a lot of similarities, right? This sounds a little cliche, but it's true. Massive markets, very difficult to replicate technology, long runway for growth, broad application of the asset. In our case, it's an energy data asset that really drives that long runway. And Arcadia checked every box. And I went further and said, I'm passionate about climate tech, about sustainability, and there's such a scarcity of pure play technology businesses serving that ecosystem, the energy transition at large. And so the stars sort of just aligned. 4 years later, it feels like it's been 3 weeks. Time absolutely flies, but it's been incredible, and I couldn't be more thrilled about where I am.
I love how you assessed it like a banker or an investor would. Like, what's the competitive moat here? What's the TAM? Like that. You got to dog food your own stuff.
It totally matters.
It does. And so I want to transition a bit to talk about M&A, because you came from the banking world, and M&A has been a big part of what you've done so far at Arcadia. What's been your approach? Because you've done a couple of these.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say, you talk about the types of CFOs out there. There's a few kinds. There's sort of your traditional accountant background. You've got operating backgrounds. You've got strategic finance. I obviously, coming from the world of banking, have more of that strategic banking mindset. And I obviously think it's critical to surround yourself with the right people. Like, I have the best VP of FP&A in the business.
It's key.
I've gotten it's unbelievably important. My Chief Accounting Officer has 25 plus years of experience, including public company experience. And so that strategic finance skill set, you talk about scarcity of the business model. I believe strategic finance is actually a bit of a scarce asset in the world of CFOs. And that plays into M&A. And that M&A is not going to be for everyone. But I was a little surprised at sort of the dearth of knowledge around how to run that play.
Yeah.
Right. Even just the negotiating tactics and, considerations and, the IMO process, integration management, all stuff that, from the world of banking, I saw and experienced and advised on, but obviously doing it from a different lens here. I think one of the bigger things that we benefited from was we sort of tested the waters early on with some small M&A deals.
Okay.
We did 2 acqui-hires within acquisitions of 2 or 3 people, companies in the first couple months that I was on the job. And we cut our teeth on those deals. We built a playbook.
Kind of like the string of pearls, we're not going to mess up on just one big one.
Totally. And it was unbelievably valuable. And we literally wrote out a playbook. And we did postmortems after each one. Yeah. And we said, hey, here's what we did well and here's what we completely botched. Right. And then when we got to the next one, we pulled those playbooks up and we said, all right, how are we going to attack what we failed at before, how we're going to do things differently. And that, I think, really played a hand in sort of successfully growing to larger acquisitions, which we've done now 5 or 6 acquisitions here since I've been here. So.
I love that you wrote the playbook, because a lot of people use this hand-wavy thing, like, we have a playbook for this or that. Can you give me just high level, what's 1 or 2 chapters that you have in an M&A playbook?
Well, culture's obviously a big thing, and making sure it's not us versus them, and we're creating an environment where everyone feels comfortable and thrives. But even just some tactical components, how we think about including compensation for employees as a part of purchase price.
That's a good one. Yeah.
So those types of things that maybe aren't at the top of your mind, but when you go through it and you live it, right, you always remember sort of, where you felt like there was value leakage that you didn't account for, right? And that saved us quite a bit in deals we've done after that.
I've even learned along the way there are nuances in how you pitch it to people. Instead of saying this is total purchase price, you can say this is the total consideration for it.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and that's some of the tactical elements. We're a private company, so I'm going to pitch you what I think the business is worth. You're going to have your own independent view, and so there's a lot of room for sort of how you think about what that equity consideration is worth. Do you quote it as a dollar amount or a number of shares?
Yeah.
Right. And there's so many of these things that you just don't think about unless you're actually doing it. But that's sort of the fun of the M&A ecosystem.
There is an art and a science to it as well, though.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report more accurately? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks and with minimal IT involvement, so you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business on your key financial progress. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unparalleled scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Oh yeah! Go to planful.com/metrics to see how you can reach peak financial performance with Planful. That's planful.com/metrics. Okay, serious question for all my accounting pros here today. Are you doing what you were hired to do? What I mean is, do you have time to actually be a business partner, or are you buried in tedious manual tasks just to get your journal entries prepared every month? I know how that feels. Leapfin's here to help with that. Leapfin is accounting automation software that automatically prepares and posts reliable journal entries. And that's just the beginning. High-growth businesses like Reddit, Canva, and SeatGeek choose Leapfin to eliminate manual tasks, accelerate month-end close, and enable accounting leaders like you to provide faster insights that will help your company grow. If you're battling messy transaction data from Stripe, Adyen, Shopify, Apple Pay, and other PSPs, and then battling again to get it all into NetSuite, go to leapfin.com to watch their short product intro video. And if you like what you see, request a 15-minute conversation to learn how accounting automation can help you and your team. Check out leapfin.com today. That's leap like jump, fin like shark. I just made that up. I hope they're okay with it. Leapfin.com. Mercury knows your financial operations are complex. Founders and finance teams have to pull together different tools, reconcile transactions from different sources, and struggle to get accurate answers. With Mercury, you can simplify your operations with banking and software that power your critical financial workflows, all within the one thing every business needs: a bank account. And with new bill pay and accounting capabilities, you can pay bills faster, stay in control of company spend, and speed up reconciliation. Apply in minutes at Mercury.com and join over 200,000, ambitious startups that trust Mercury to provide the precision, control, and focus they need to transform their financial workflows so they can perform at their best. Mercury, the art of simplified finances. Mercury is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Choice Financial Group and Evolve Bank and Trust. Members FDIC. I'm getting good at that voice.
Private company M&A can go really right or really wrong.
Yep.
We'd spoke to John McCauley, the CFO of Calendly, and on the pod, he had this contrarian take like, dude, M&A is not for private companies. Like, you're supposed to take that money and innovate with it. There's a pretty good chance you're gonna mess this up pretty badly. And I was actually kind of taken aback by it because I'm like, I think every company I've been a part of a couple of deals. Some of them have gone really well. But then I was also thinking like, am I uniquely suited to be carrying this out? Like along with my day job? Like what, would you push back? Like how can private companies be good at it?
Look, I'm not at all surprised to hear John say that. It's a valid remark and probably more of the norm.
Yeah.
Right? I would think like some of what we're doing is more of the exception. The one important thing I would say is it's how you use it. I mean, we've got the biggest challenge that we have is there's so much opportunity for organic growth, right? The risk is that you distract yourself from being able to achieve your goals organically. But there's so much, if you do it right, there's so much opportunity for value creation. We've seen that. We've done all different types of deals for different reasons. But look, M&A is not for everyone. Like we also have a platform that's sort of very relevant for M&A. Like we're a data ecosystem. It's very easy for us. When you think about the world of sustainability and the energy transition, there's so many unbelievable technologies out there that are usually small, very unique, incredible IP, oftentimes just don't have the balance sheet or sort of, our point solutions that are more difficult from a go-to-market standpoint. Plug them into our platform and we can cross-sell it, to our 400 plus enterprise customers. And so there's opportunities to create value for both sides. The balance is not getting in the way, not distracting from the organic opportunity. And so it's hard. Yeah. It's not for everyone, but it's worked really well for us.
And just for the benefit of listeners, cross-selling when it comes to M&A, is that when you acquire something and basically you take the product and say, we already have existing customers? How does that work?
Yeah, basically. So I'll give you a really good example. We acquired a business called Genability in 2021. It was a rate and tariff database, basically, and supplemented our utility data ecosystem and database incredibly well. We basically took that product and access to that data ecosystem, and we sold it to all of our utility data enterprise customers, as a module, right, to amplify and accelerate their use cases. And we quadrupled their ARR in 2 years just by selling that product into our customer base. It obviously doesn't even factor in, the value that it brought to our new sale or selling to new customers. So it's a great example of sort of the plugging of a point solution into our ecosystem and creating more value for our customers.
That is a 1 + 1 = 3. I always laugh when people say that, but like it is kind of true in those rare opportunities.
Yeah, it is.
Paul, how do you put guardrails in place to make sure things don't get messed up? I feel like that is something that's often overlooked. People only talk about the things that can go right. What do you say to your team just to like keep an eye out for something doesn't go wrong during these?
Communication, maybe this sounds cliche, but it's so key, especially as you're growing in size. And you're, especially when you're bringing on companies that are larger in size. For one, we did an acquisition in 2022 that had a global presence, right? We were primarily based in the U.S. They had a strong U.S. presence, of course, but they also had a team in southern India. Those communication channels can be challenging, right? But the first battle is creating forums to have those conversations and identify issues, and then to create ownership and accountability about how you're going to attack them, right? Singular individuals that are going to quarterback certain pathways or objectives, creating roadmaps and setting timelines and holding people accountable. But the first step is just creating that forum to have the conversation and identify and document.
We were talking to Kevin Kraus, CFO of 8x8, customer support SaaS product. He was saying his contrarian take was you shouldn't have like a strategic group who's responsible just for the M&A and project managing it. You should have people whose day jobs are something else because like they have a faster learning curve and otherwise won't get implemented correctly. What do you think, like when you acquire a company, should you have just a core group whose job it is to implement it, or is it like, dude, no, you have two jobs now?
I lean more on his take, actually. I do think there's value in project management, quarterbacking, right? Ensuring that you're setting agendas and having productive meetings. But at the end of the day, when you think about actual implementation,
right,
especially on the tech side, when you're implementing technology, that's probably the most difficult piece of M&A or type of M&A. Having those on the ground floor that are operating the business, drive solutions and achievement against that roadmap is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
So I do actually agree with that contrarian take, although I don't think that's all that contrarian.
Yeah. I've been at places, and maybe this is like a symptom of like zero interest rates where you just have like these, I think somebody said like at Amazon there were some groups that had like 150 people who did like strategic initiatives, and I don't know. I come from that like that bullpen of people, so hopefully those jobs stick around.
Yeah, world has changed.
Yeah, the world has changed. It's funny how you mention like the tech implementation side of things. Like, yes, that's core. But I've also been a part of M&A where you inherit like, oh, now we have QuickBooks, we have Xero, we have Netsuite, and like, I don't know how you would ever hire somebody from the outside to like integrate like your general ledger, which is like a super tactical thing to say, but there's probably somebody listening right now like, oh yeah, I inherited like this general ledger from like the UK, and it was an absolute nightmare to pull together.
Yeah, I mean, we I think almost every business we've acquired has been on QuickBooks.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we're on NetSuite.
Sponsor the pod. Shout out NetSuite.
There you go. There you go. Well, we love NetSuite. There are definitely parties out there to help with those things. I actually think where we've seen most of the work done is building on top. So the transition from QuickBooks to NetSuite was something that's tried and true, and we've now done time and time again. But there are components. We have usage-based components of pricing, right? That was something that we didn't have before, and so building that type of functionality on top of NetSuite was where we've utilized external advisors who have done that time and time again. So it's obviously very case by case.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to talk a bit about CFO frameworks and characteristics, and I ask most of the guests who come on the show, Paul, are there characteristics that you think separate the good versus the great CFOs?
Well, there's a couple things. Number one on my mind is, maybe I'm biased because I, again, come from the strategic finance background.
Yeah.
So let's call a spade. But I think it's critical for your CFO to be able to tell the company's story.
Yeah. The whole story, not just the finance story.
The whole story, not just the finance story. And being able to marry the metrics to the narrative is a critical component to that. It probably is a big difference between what makes a CFO good versus great. But you can't just rely on your CEO to be the storyteller. I mean, they're pulled in so many different directions. I mean, quite frankly, I want my CFO selling.
Yeah,
right. That's where I'm going to get the most value. And if I can play the role in amplifying our story to take some of that burden off of him in this instance, I think that there's a ton of value in that. But the second thing on my mind is maybe more from the operational lens, which is something I've really experienced in the past year, which is just transparency. Within the world of finance, especially private companies, people oftentimes are afraid to be transparent. They're afraid to disclose. They're afraid to, set targets and miss targets. And I'm just not sure I agree with that notion. One of the first things I did when I sort of stepped into this role, we had an in-person kickoff event for the entire company, and I held the lunch presentation, and I walked through where we were, sort of what the last few years have looked like and where we're going. But I disclosed things like our cash burn rate. Even at times in zero interest rate environment where we look back and, we say we probably could have done things more efficiently.
Yeah.
But the reason why we did that was to help people understand what we're actually solving for. Like, we've got this unbelievable growth opportunity, but we can't just grow at all costs anymore. And if I don't empower my people we've got thousands of decisions that are being made every single day at every single level of the business. If they don't understand what we're solving for, how can I possibly expect them to make a decision that's in line with the objectives that we've set? And so that sort of transparency piece has really been something I've tried to lean into.
That resonates so much. We'd spoken to Jim Cook, who was part of the founding team at Netflix, and he was a CFO at Mozilla and a bunch of other places. And he had this framework of treating people like adults. And he said, like, it's scary to think about, but they appreciate it. And even when you don't know the answer, and his framework was to tell people, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, and this is when we think we'll know. And he said, that gets everybody under the same tent.
That's a great frame. That's a really good frame. I might actually use that.
Steal it. I stole from him.
I love that. I really love that. And then look, it extends beyond, just meeting our financial objectives. Like, a couple other examles. I run an equity 101 at our company on a monthly
say more
basis.
about this. I love this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Part of our philosophy is that our employees should have an ownership stake in the company.
Yeah.
And care about and share in the growth of the business. Again, create ownership of those day-to-day decisions. But what's the point in giving equity to your employees if they don't understand the value of it today and the value of what it could be in the future, right? And look, I'll be the first to tell you, option structures are complicated.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like, most people don't understand them unless you've worked, at a private company or a private tech company. It's hard to really understand what they mean or how to think about them. And so we try to create a safe space for people to ask questions. But we probably we disclose more than I think most companies usually disclose around where we've raised equity at in the past, how to think about secondary market trades, what our 409A valuations have looked like and how they've trended and how that translates to what we think the intrinsic value of an option might be today. We talk about all those things, and we do it because we want to ensure equity is viewed as a retention mechanism for our employees. So that's one cool example. The other one I love to highlight is and I'm really proud of this. We put out a corporate responsibility report.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, our first one last year. We're about to release our second, and transparency was the guiding principle around these first few reports. And so we report things like diversity across the entire ecosystem, diversity at senior levels, pay equity, right?
Yeah.
We're probably forward-leaning around some of what we disclose in those areas. And that's by design. Like, we need to own those metrics to hold ourselves accountable to actually drive those in the directions we want them to, and to frankly put programming around them and measure whether or not those programs are being effective or not. Same concept. If you're not transparent and you don't put those metrics out there, how can you hold yourself as an organization accountable? So
I like how open door you are to the concept of like going through equity, because a lot of people, they don't want to look stupid by asking. And so as a result, incentives get misaligned because they have this valuable asset, but they don't want to understand the core workings of it. And so they kind of just put it on a shelf or put it in a drawer and save it for later. And I think that can be harmful at a company, especially when everything you're doing is to increase the shareholder value.
Look, that's the idea. We have varying degrees of participation. Sometimes we'll have 200 people on the call, sometimes we'll have 25. But I do think it's a net positive.
Yeah. And there are all these tricky things that happen too. Like, sometimes your 409A valuation will actually go down, and then you have to explain to people, like, this isn't a reflection of like the outcome of what the company will be. This is just mechanically how it works.
That could be okay. We could be growing incredibly quickly, but the markets just completely fall out of bed. It gives us and gives me a forum to have that conversation,
right?
To sort of demystify,
demystify, such a good word. Yeah,
it is a good word. And so we've been thrilled about sort of some of the benefits of the tactic.
And something that you said to me before we started is that when you're transparent, you want to use actual data. You don't want to just use made-up estimates. And that's so true, because I think people get into this weird like rhythm where they're like, we're going to share, but we're going to share kind of like high-level stuff. And that just kind of like throws people off, and they're like, well, I don't really understand what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, look, that in a nutshell is the Arcadia story. Like, we're taking an ecosystem that has served use cases based on energy consumption estimates, right? Or guesses around energy consumption. We're actually overlaying actual auditable data down to the utility bill. So I know that wasn't the intent of your comment, but it rings true.
Yeah.
It rings true.
You had another quality. You said stay nimble. What's that one?
Process is such a fascinating thing, and from a finance professional, process and controls is critical. But I do think as you think about process and frameworks that work internally, it's important to be nimble. Like the same framework may not work the same at one company as the next, or even within one group within the organization to the next. We use OKRs, for example, objectives and key results, as sort of goal setting and measurement, amplification, and rallying, and we've implemented it in different ways.
Yeah.
Right. Like we've taken the heavyweight approach, where we literally have subgroup OKRs that are updated every single week. Which my team knows I'm very against sort of bureaucratic processes, or processes that feel bureaucratic. You spend more time updating the tracker than you are on actually achieving.
That was going to be my comment. Yeah.
We've also seen the other side, where we've taken a lightweight approach, too lightweight approach, and things get lost. And
you forget what they are.
Yeah, totally. So it defeats the purpose. So I think in that example, it's like anything else. It's finding where on the spectrum you find the right equilibrium, the right balance. And you mold sort of what's working and what's not working to the team, to that specific team. And we use OKRs today, and I think there are still things that we can do better, and we're working on them. But we're still in that sort of trying to find exactly where the right equilibrium is.
I think with OKRs, it comes down to the cadence and then the consistency.
Yeah.
So a lot of people get super excited about them. They're like, we're gonna have daily OKRs. Then like 10 days in, like nobody's looking at them. They're like, well, that goes out the window.
Yeah, I liken it to standing one-on-ones. Yeah. I can't do it.
I hate them.
I can't do it. We spend more time preparing and for these one-on-ones, like pick up the phone and give me a call.
Right.
I'm always available.
Yeah. I'll flag that for listeners. Yeah, one-on-ones, I look at the calendar a lot of times. I'm like, how about you just text or call me or Slack me when it's important?
That's it. I mean, if we were in an office environment, you just back your seat up.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, I got something for you. Yeah, totally.
I do miss that a bit.
On a personal level, you told me that one of your mantras is never give up. Where does that one come from?
Yeah, I mean, this is, anyone who knows me, thinks of two general things. One is Philadelphia sports, and two is never giving up. It sort of sounds a little silly, but it was a phrase coined. Well, I say it's coined by my dad. It was actually coined by Winston Churchill. Okay. But my dad would like to take credit for that. He unfortunately is no longer with us, but his legacy lives in this statement. And every night before my brother and sister and I went to bed growing up, literally every single night, I kid you not, he would always ask us individually, what are the magic words? And the answer was not please and thank you.
Yeah.
The answer was never give up.
Wow.
or don't give up. And it's just something that was ingrained in our mind. And to this day, I asked my 7-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son the same thing every night. Last night, what are the magic words? And I think it's a really simple concept, but it goes such a long way. And frankly, it goes back to the concept of betting on yourself, right? Like, tie it back to our earlier conversation. In a world, in a startup world or a growth world, when you're building something from scratch, whether it's technology, it's processes, it's controls, or what have you, that's a really critical mindset, because you're constantly faced with challenges, you're constantly faced with things you haven't experienced before, and if you create sort of this mindset of never giving up, I think the team rallies behind the concept of there's no task that's too tall, right? I sometimes get frustrated when people come to me with a problem. I don't want to hear singularly what the problem is, or I definitely don't want to hear whose fault it was. I want to hear solutions to what the problem is. Give me both at the same time, or give me alternative solutions that we can discuss.
People separate those too often.
Like, let's be solution oriented and figure out how we're gonna go forward. And I would say it's particularly irrelevant for Arcadia. Like we're literally attacking our generation's biggest problem right? And we view ourselves as a critical solution to that problem, but never give up. Sort of a really great saying for the ecosystem we live in, because we've at the risk of sounding cliche, we're never going to give up on that problem. It's just a really fun way to sort of
That's inspiring. I love
connect
it.
my past to my future.
Yeah. I've been telling my 2-year-old daughter every night that the mantra is "Go Celtics," but I think I'm gonna steal yours, Paul.
Timely.
Yeah.
Congrats, though.
Yeah. What I'm gonna do is take you into what we call our long ass lightning round. First question.
Let's do it.
You're a successful guy, but I ask everybody, give me something you've screwed up in your career. Could be this job or any other job.
I have a pretty good one. It's gonna sound like I'm saying it wasn't me, it was a friend, but it actually was a friend. I just really love this story. This was before all of the controls around email, sending emails externally, and a friend of mine literally sent our entire pipeline to Goldman Sachs.
Really?
Yeah, and it was
When you were a banker?
when I was a banker. Yeah.
That's the good stuff.
It was. I laugh now.
Yeah.
The ironic thing about it is all our pipelines were the same, so it probably didn't matter.
Right.
But it's just like this concept of sending your pipeline to a competitor, your biggest competitor, is somewhat alarming. And literally the next week, there was technology implementing, every time you click send externally, are you sure you want to send this externally? And I'm pretty sure that was the catalyst.
Necessity is the mother of innovation, so good for your friend.
There you go.
Next one, Paul, if you could tell your younger self something knowing what you know today, what would you tell him?
In person, always better than virtual. Always
Okay.
better than Zoom. Shake
You're
hands.
my first in-person
There you
podcast
go.
ever.
This is probably why it's going to be the best one.
I know, it took me like 67 episodes. This is it.
Yeah, look, in person, firm handshakes, look people in the eye, develop relationships, read body language. It's a totally different dynamic. Whether you're
it's
selling
true.
something or selling a product, a technology, or you're selling a story, or selling a podcast.
Yeah. And everybody sells too. I've talked about this on other podcasts. I didn't realize growing up that MD at a bank, number one job is sales. Big Four accounting partner, number one job is sales. CFO, number one job is sales. You're selling to employees, you're selling to investors, you're selling to, I hope you're not selling to the auditors, but you're doing that too. But sales, that too. This is a new one we've started. Can you tell us a story or a lesson about negotiation?
I'm going to go off spec here. I'm an avid bobblehead collector.
Let's go.
Yeah, I can't say I have any Boston Celtics bobbleheads. I have a few 76ers, but I love negotiating on eBay.
Okay.
And the problem with negotiating for something that you're a collector for, you're always going to overpay. So I feel like I'm getting these really great deals, and I'm inevitably overpaying every single time. But it's fun.
What's your number one bobblehead?
It might be either Woody from Toy Story wearing a Phillies hat,
Okay.
or Jason Kelce holding a Jason Kelce bobblehead.
That's so meta. Real quick, can you walk me through your finance software stack? What tools do you use?
Yeah, we're pretty streamlined. We use NetSuite. We love NetSuite. I'll say Salesforce. We use that for pipeline management and FP&A. We've recently adopted Cube as another FP&A tool.
Nice.
Flowcast on the accounting side.
Oh yeah, Razak Jallo's come on the podcast. He's the man.
Yeah.
CFO Flowcast.
Yeah, they've been great.
Last one. Craziest thing you've ever seen someone try to expense other than a bobblehead?
Arcadians are responsible people.
There we go.
Come on.
All right.
We don't have anything too crazy.
I love it.
How's that for an answer?
That's good. Paul, I can't thank you enough for coming down here. This is amazing.
Unbelievable. No, I really appreciate you having me, CJ. I've been following you for quite some time. You provide unbelievable data. For those of you who haven't been listening or following CJ's distribution, I highly encourage it, because
Thank you.
I distribute your content to a number of my team on occasion. So
That's
thank you
crazy
for all the
whenever
work
I hear that from people, that
put in.
people are reading my ramblings and whatnot. Thanks so much for coming.
Of course.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, CJ.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.